So how exactly did I end up getting kidney disease? It's a misconception that there's only one way that you can end up with kidney disease and on dialysis. So people just assume that when they see me, it's like, oh, well, obviously it's because, all of that fried chicken and malt liquor that you guys drink. That's why you're on dialysis. But no, that's a very common misconception, especially about blacks and minorities. There's several different ways that you can end up with kidney disease. Not just one, not just diabetes, but you can have an acute injury, cancer. You could be born without kidney functionality. There's a lot of different ways you could end up with kidney disease. Degenerative diseases can also be a cause. There's a lot of different ways that you can end up with kidney disease and on dialysis. So what happened to me? So out of all the videos that I've made, I've never actually gone into like how exactly it is I ended up in this position that I'm in right now. So I got really, really sick with something else, a autoimmune disease called HLH. HLH is an autoimmune disease where my white blood cells went berserk, start destroying all the other cells in my body. And as a result of that, I got really sick. Certain immune cells called macrophages, like in particular, were the ones that caused most of the damage. So as a result of that, I needed to get on emergency chemo right away. So I was sick for about 3 days with HLH. Now I thought that it was just a regular cold or a flu or something like that. So I didn't think anything of it at first. So I'm doing the routine thing that you would think that you would need to do when you're dealing with a cold or a flu. I'm taking all the medicine, the NyQuil, the Dayquil. I'm taking all this stuff, but I'm not feeling better. I'm getting worse. Like I'm feeling worse. And I don't know what's going on. So I got to about the third day. And then I realized this is not, like, something inside of me said this is not normal. Like I'm too sick for too long. And I'm not like getting better. So during this, I had zero energy. I was fatigued. I had a fever. I had all the symptoms of a flu, except a little bit worse. So when I realized that I think I'm in real trouble here, like I'm in real trouble here, I need to get to a hospital immediately. So this was a Saturday, and there was nobody in the home with me. I was alone. And in my condition, like my condition was rapidly deteriorating. So in my weakened condition, I got into my car and drove. I had to drive to the next city because my doctor, it was Saturday, so there was no doctor for me to see. So I had to drive to the next city. And like I was barely keeping it together. I was driving as slow as possible. I was like fading in and out of like just, I was tired. I was just sick. And when I finally got to a hospital that would take my insurance, I drug myself in there. I got to the front desk and I just put my head on the desk. And the nurse was having me fill out some stuff, and she asked me if I needed an ambulance. And like, I was like, yes, I need an ambulance, but not as energetic or as spry as I'm saying it now. And then the next thing you know, she asked me if I needed an ambulance. And then the next thing you know, I was at the hospital. I have no recollection of the time I got to the office to the time I got to the hospital. I was just in the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they didn't know what was going on. Like, none of the doctors had any idea or any clue of like what this was. They took blood samples, they did EKGs, they put heart monitors on me. None of the doctors at that hospital could figure out what was wrong. They were asking me questions. They were asking my mom questions when she got there. They were asking me if I had AIDS or HIV. I told them no. multiple times. They kept asking me if I was like gay and if I was having homosexual relationships and if I had AIDS or HIV. I was like, no, I don't have HIV. I've never been exposed to AIDS or HIV or any of that stuff. Now, mind you, like, it feels like I'm dying, right? And they can't figure it out. And my condition was worsening the longer they waited, until eventually they sent my blood work to the oncology department. And there was one doctor in particular. Her name was Dr. Powers. And she looked at the markers she looked at the markers that was in my blood based on other markers that they had of like conditions of people that when they come into the hospital. And she said, listen, I think based off of his blood work and based off the markers, I think that it's this. The HLH. So HLH stands for hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. That's what HLH stands for. And I had it. It's very rare. And it's an adolescent disease. Like babies and like children, like, adolescent people are the ones that this affects the most. It rarely ever happens to adults, but it can happen. And I'm one of the very few adults that has happened to. So after doing further testing, they came to the conclusion that it was in fact HLH. So from there, they had to get me on emergency chemotherapy immediately. It's the only way you can deal with HLH. You need chemo. They put me on a very powerful chemo regimen right away. So they were just, the minute they realized what it was, they start pumping me with chemo like the same day. And I was in the hospital, I think for a month, 30 days I was in the hospital. And they were giving me chemo and other very powerful chemo-related drugs the whole duration of me being in there. But that still didn't, stop it. So after I got out of the hospital for 30 days later, they sent me to an ambulatory cancer center where I had to do more chemo. And this is just making a long story short, because my stay, it was a nightmare. Like it was horrible. I felt horrible every day. Like I had to sort of relearn how to write because, I was so weak that I wasn't using my hands. So anything I wrote was just a scribble. Like that's all I could do. I had to relearn how to write. I had to, I was laying in a bed for 30 days. I had to recondition my legs to walk. I had to strengthen my legs how to walk again and not be, wheelchair bound or anything like that. And during that time, they had to, I was subject to painful examinations and exams, and it was awful. Like it was horrible. It was a horrible time. But that's not like the first time that something like that has happened to me. It was just the latest time that something like that happened to me. It's strange because out of all the rare diseases, out of all the diseases I could have gotten, I got one of the most rare. And this is the second time that something like this has happened, because when I was a kid, I had Stevens-Johnson syndrome based off an allergic reaction. And I was in the hospital that first time 3 months. So then many, many years later, once I became an adult, I think I was 11 or 12 when that happened. Maybe 10, 11, 12, around there. So when the Stevens-Johnson happened. And then many, many years later, when I became an adult, I got the HLH. Now, I'm a diabetic. I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when I was a teenager. When I was 18. So up until that point, the diabetes wasn't a real problem for me. It wasn't an issue for me. But when I got sick with the HLH, the drugs combined with the chemo, my system went completely berserk. Like, it was completely out of whack. Blood pressure through the roof. Blood sugars through the roof. So they had to make a decision. So when I got diagnosed, my kidney function was good. I still had like full kidney function, but like over time, your kidneys just degrade over time. Even in a healthy person, that's just what happens. But like my kidneys were functioning fine before I got sick. Never had any issues. Then when I got sick, a decision had to be made. Either I keep doing the chemo and save my life, or I sacrifice the kidneys, or I try to keep kidney function, and die anyway. So those were the decisions. It was a lose-lose situation either way. Either I stop the chemo to save the kidney and I die, you know what I mean? Or I sacrifice the kidney to keep doing the chemo. So obviously, you know what the answer was. And it wasn't an easy one. It wasn't easy as pie. It wasn't an easy decision to come to. But everything was happening so fast, I had no time to think. I just had to make snap decisions right away and let the chips fall where they may. So as a result of all of this, my kidneys were damaged. So by the end, at the end of the HLH and everything, I had at least 30% kidney function. And then in less than a year, it went from 30 and it dropped all the way down to 15. And then it dropped all the way down to 5. End-stage renal failure. In less than a year. I don't even think it was a year when it happened. So everything happened like extremely quickly. I had like no time to think or process. So by the time I got done with chemo, it was like, Carl, your kidneys are failing. You need to think about dialysis options. And that's a whole other story. So that's how my kidneys got damaged and I ended up as a dialysis patient. I was 33 when I got sick with HLH. That's how it started. And then I was around 35, 36 when I ended up on dialysis. So that whole period of time, from 33 for like 3 years, I was just battling HLH. And HLH is kind of like cancer. So you give it the chemo, you hit it with the chemo, you hit it with all this stuff, and there's always a possibility that it could come back. They don't know. HLH is still a disease that we have frighteningly little information about. Like, we still don't know that much about how it happens, where it comes from. We just, like, we as a society just deal with it when it happens. If you're a HLH survivor, you just deal with it when it happens. Like, there's no education or information about preventative measures. I'm sure that the basic stuff, don't drink, don't smoke. Yeah, but it's just something inside of you. And my family has no history of HLH. As far as I know, I'm the first and only person that has ever been diagnosed with this. Now, I come from a family of people who have had cancer. My mother is a stage 3 breast cancer survivor. I've had an aunt and an uncle die from cancer. I've had one aunt die from Lou Gehrig's disease. Those illnesses have been established in like my bloodline, but HLH is like exclusively like me. That's my thing. And once, the HLH was in remission, I'll say that. Once it was in remission, it's not like it's a happy day. I feel so blessed. It's like, I'm always concerned that it's going to come back. I'm always concerned that it's going to come back at the worst, most inopportune times in my life. It's a constant fear that I have, like anybody would that is a cancer survivor. It's one of the reasons why, like, I want a kidney transplant so badly. Because from 33 till now, I'm 39 now, but from 33 till now, that's all I've been doing is just battling illness. That's all I've been doing. And now, I'm probably going to be in like my early 40s, mid 40s by the time they decide to make a decision to give me a transplant, and I'm going to be closer to 50 than I am, 30. And I just want to be strong enough to live my life, not just survive, to thrive in my life rather than just exist, rather than just be alive. I want to live. Not like this, not just making do, not just, oh, I'm looking on the bright side, not none of that bullshit. I'm talking about actually living like I was before. That's important to me. So that is like the abridged story of how I ended up on dialysis.